Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining me again. For the last few days, possibly a week or so, there has been an odd noise in my garden. To start with, I thought it was the call of a raven. It sounds very like a raven, although I have never heard one in the garden before. Eventually, I realised there was no way it was a raven because it didn't seem to be moving around at all and it just wasn't quite right. So at that point, I started doing a little bit more investigation because it was a very odd noise. It still is an odd noise. Eventually, I discovered that there's a tree down in the woods that has started to fall and it is touching another tree. The noise is being made by two large branches rubbing together. And at some point, that situation will have to be rectified. The fact that the trees rubbing together sound like a raven, though, reminded me of a story. The story has nothing to do with trees, but everything to do with ravens. So this is a traditional Christmas story from France, and I'm using the version of it that Bob Hartman wrote in his book, The Storyteller Christmas Book. This is the raven. Raven was a jealous bird. He was jealous of robin and bluebird and dove, for they were more beautiful than him. He was jealous of sparrow and nightingale too, because he could never hope to sing like they did. So raven flew through the night skies, a sad and bitter shadow, calling out his lonely cry. One cold December night, Raven suddenly sensed that he was not alone. He felt the sky above him shiver, as if he were in the wake of a much larger bird, eagle perhaps, or vulture. But then Raven heard singing, singing so lovely that it could not have come from an eagle or a vulture. The first thing that struck Raven was jealousy. Why should he bother with yet another beautiful bird and its golden voice? But there was curiosity as well. And so, fighting his jealousy, Raven looked up into the sky, and there, floating above him, was not a flock of birds, but a flock of golden angels. Good news, the angels sang. We have good news. God's own son is born in Bethlehem tonight, and you, Raven, must go and tell the other birds. Me? Croaked Raven. Why me? I am the ugliest of the birds. And as for my voice, well, hear for yourselves, they will never listen to me. But you, you have been chosen, the angels sang. And without another word, they flew off into the night. What could Raven do? The birds had to know, and he of all birds had been chosen to tell them. So he flew down from the sky to the treetops, his cry as sharp and piercing as the winter's night. Christ is born, he called to robin and bluebird and to dove, born in Bethlehem tonight. Then we must go and see him, they chirped. And Raven was surprised. Not one of them mentioned how ugly Raven was. Christ is born, he called again to sparrow and to nightingale. Then we must go and sing to him, they twittered. And again, Raven was surprised because not one of them said a thing about the harshness of Raven's voice. And so Raven flew to Bethlehem too. He watched the baby reach out and touch Robin's bright red breast. He heard the baby giggle and coo with Nightingale's sweet lullaby. And he wished that he could do something more than just perch high in the stable's rafters. But don't you see, came a voice, a sweet sing-song voice amid a flutter of golden wings. Don't you see, Raven, you have done the most important thing of all, for none of the other birds would be here if you had not pierced the night with your cries and told them the good news. And then the angel disappeared. And so, leaving his jealousy behind, Raven took flight too, down from the rafters to join the others beside the child. I guess maybe we all feel a little ravenish from time to time, doubting ourselves perhaps, maybe even admitting a little bit of jealousy of other people. But thankfully, God doesn't see any of us like that. He sees each of us the way that we are, and he loves us the way that we are, even though sometimes, like Raven, he loves us too much to leave us the way that we are. As ever, I'm going to finish with a prayer. And as ever, if you'd like to make it your prayer, feel free to stick an amen in the comments. Father God, help us not to compare ourselves to others, but to try to see ourselves the way that you see us. Amen. Thank you for joining me. See you again tomorrow, I hope. Bye for now.